Hello, it's me, it's Tom, it's the brains of the operation, it's the knowledge, it's the smarts, and I'm here with a UFC 202 preview. Now, if you want to hear exclusively about Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz, you can go do that here. Joe Hendry has covered that from head to toe. I'm going to be doing everything from the prelims all the way to the co-main event. So, without further ado, here it is, the UFC 202 preview.
Before I get to Daniel, I got to get past this beast that's to my left over here. That's the Brazilian killing machine.
He's the number one contender, and I have to beat him so I can fight for the title.
In the opening fight of the night, Alberto Uda takes on Marvin Vettori, who makes his UFC debut. What makes this fight particularly interesting is that both men have very established ground games. Uda is 10 years Vettori's elder, and this fight will be a great demonstration of age versus experience. Vettori, though, is no bum. He's fought out of London shoot fighters who are producing some of the best stand-up fighters in the world, one of those being London's very own MVP Michael Venom Page. He's picked up some impressive wins in Venator, and he'll be looking to make a serious statement tonight. In our next fight, Colby Covington will face a short-notice opponent in Max Griffin. This will be a huge test for Covington, who's both won one and lost one within the octagon. Looking to prove that loss was just a fluke, Covington should look for the takedown as Griffin is coming in with some serious hype around his striking game. Griffin, who will be making his UFC debut, scored a huge knockout win over UFC veteran David Mitchell in his last fight at WFC 16. Neil Magny vs Lorenz Larkin is the main event of the prelims on Fight Pass, and holy hell does it have Fight of the Night written all over it. Magny really needs no introduction, especially after his exceptional TKO victory over Hector Lombard at Fight Night 85. Who does that to Hector Lombard? Nobody, that's who. Coming in to crash the Neil Magny train, though, is Lorenz the Monsoon Larkin. If there is any guy in the UFC that embodies his nickname to a T, it's Larkin. A Strikeforce vet still waiting to reach his potential in the UFC, Larkin brings a lot of unpredictability into this fight. Down at welterweight, Larkin has really demonstrated his power, but will it be enough? Moving on to the FS1 prelims, we've got Randa Marcos versus Courtney Casey. One of the women that competed in the Ultimate Fighter, a champion will be crowned. Randa Marcos makes her 5th appearance for the UFC, where she'll be taking on Courtney Casey. Courtney Casey is coming off a vicious TKO victory over Christina Sanchu. If you haven't seen that fight, go watch it. Those elbows are some of the finest in women's MMA. If Casey can implement this aggression, I think Marcos could be in some serious trouble. Moving up the card, we've got Artem Lobov versus Chris Avila. In other words, we have Team McGregor versus Team Diaz. Longtime training partner of Conor McGregor, Artem Lobov takes on Diaz protege Chris Avila. Having lost his first 2 fights in the octagon, Lobov is coming into this fight with his team's pride at stake. As a seasoned veteran, Lobov will look to take on UFC newcomer Chris Avila, who has demonstrated some serious skills outside of the UFC. The question is, can Avila rise to the occasion and shock Lobov like Diaz did McGregor back at UFC 196? In the women's bantamweight division, we have Raquel Pennington versus Elizabeth Phillips. Pennington is set to make her 7th appearance for the UFC, who is looking to push her way up the rankings with a win over Phillips. In her fight with former UFC bantamweight champion Holly Holm, Pennington proved that she could hang and trade with some of the best, making Holm's UFC debut look less than impressive. Phillips, on the other hand, is also looking to prove that she can hang. Having not competed since July last year, Phillips has a huge task ahead of her against a game Pennington. In the main event of the FS1 prelims, Cody Garbrandt takes on Takeya Mitsugaki. I don't think that there is another rising star more interesting than Garbrandt. Fighting out of Team Alpha Male, the undefeated star looks to jump one step closer to that fight with Dominic Cruz that everyone wants to see. Can Garbrandt finish what Uriah Faber couldn't? We won't know if he can't get past Takeya Mitsugaki. Now immediately, it seems that Mitsugaki is being counted out of this fight, but if Mitsugaki can stick a move keeping Garbrandt at bay, utilising his boxing, I can see, however unlikely that it is, this fight could go all 3 rounds. You might have noticed that I'm a Cody No Love fan, but who am I kidding, Garbrandt's going to stomp this guy in the first. Moving on to the main card, Tim Means takes on Sabah Homasi, who's come in at 15 days notice. The UFC vet Tim Means is making his 12th appearance for the UFC, Reebok money in hand, and takes on Sabah Homasi. Having fought professionally since 2009, Homasi is finally getting the opportunity to fight on the big stage, but it's at short notice. But that may be an advantage for Homasi. Unpredictability could be key for him here to keep Means in check. Either way, this is going to be a really exciting stand-up battle. Another short notice replacement here is Mike Perry fills in to take on Hung-Gu Lim. Coming off from a loss against rising star and prelim main eventer Neil Magny, Lim will look to test newcomer Mike Perry. In short, Mike Perry is a scary guy. He's got sort of a Diego Sanchez essence about him. Basically, I'm saying he looks nuts, but with a 6-0 record, all 6 being first and second round KO finishes. I honestly don't know how this fight's going to go, but sort of Lim should look for the takedown really. Next up we have Rick Story versus Donald Cerrone. This should be a hell of a fight. Donald Cerrone is always such an exciting fighter to watch, always ready to throw down with Budweiser bottles between rounds. He looks to continue his win streak at welterweight, though he has a huge test in Rick Story. Story is always a guy that never quite made it to the top. With a win over Cerrone, Story has the chance to finally make his name known, even though he has some serious wins over guys like Johnny Hendricks and Thiago Alves. With Fight of the Night written all over it, this is the fight that everyone should really keep close attention to. And the co-main event, Anthony Rumble Johnson versus Glover Teixeira. What else do I need to say? These guys are monsters. With a title fight hanging on the line, you know that both guys will be coming into this fight to make a serious statement. I would say this is more of a dangerous fight for Teixeira. The way he fights by putting pressure on his opponents and trading in the pocket is where Rumble absolutely shines. All it takes is one big shot from Rumble. Teixeira should implement his ground skills, drag Rumble to the ground and submit him, but I think he's going to want to trade with Rumble and make a statement, but good luck to him. Now here to make predictions for UFC 202, I give you Mr. Joe Hendry.
This is Joe Hendry here, and here are my 5 picks for the main card tonight for UFC 202. I'm going to go for Tim Means, I'm going to go for Hyun-Byu Lim, Donald Cerrone, Anthony Rumble Johnson, and of course, the notorious Conor McGregor.
For my predictions, I'm going to go for Tim Means, Mike Perry, Rick Story, Anthony Rumble Johnson, and Nate Diaz. I hope you enjoyed the preview. Make sure you follow us on Twitter here for all the UFC 202 live coverage. I'm Tom, and I'll see you soon.